Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Gary Kline is here between flights, right? And we're talking about trending technology for radio. Some of it you might expect, other, it's new information I hadn't heard yet. Coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb there from the top of the tower. I'm Kirk Harnack in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. See, to prove it, I've got some Telos Alliance gear right here, including intercom systems, some X nodes, a Zip 1. I've got more gear over in the rack and even got some virtual gear over in the, it's actually over in the garage on a table in the garage. So it's all here. Hey, and I'm thankful to Telos for giving me, a couple hours on Thursdays to get This Week in Radio Tech done so that I can bring it to you. And we are doing the show a little bit differently today. Let me go ahead and bring our guest in, and then we'll chit-chat about that. We chatted about this for a sec in the pre-show, but we'll go ahead and make it part of theirs. So this is Gary Kline. Gary, welcome in. So good to see you.
Here we are.
Where you're normally on an airplane or in some foreign country. So where are you now?
I'll be going to a foreign country on Tuesday. Today, I'm in Atlanta at the Children's Hospital of Atlanta. They have a couple of buildings, but I'm at the one in Eggleston, if anybody is familiar with Atlanta. And I'm sitting just outside the Ryan Seacrest studio, of which there are currently, I think, 11 of them. And this is the first one we built, and this is the one in Atlanta. And I happen to be here today doing a little bit of work. So this is where I find myself at 5 p.m. Eastern. And I'm sitting behind that door is the studio, and I'm sitting right outside of it.
You've been associated with Ryan Seacrest Studios, which are they all in children's hospitals?
They are.
Okay, because there's one here in Nashville at Vanderbilt.
There's one in Nashville at Vanderbilt, which I've been at as well, and Cincinnati and Dallas and Denver and Orange County, and newest one is in Orlando. I think they've announced a couple of new ones that are coming out. But they're all over. If anybody wants to, they can Google Ryan Seacrest Studios or Ryan Seacrest Foundation. They can find out all about it. But it's really great because the kids, there are a lot of kids. They're around me. You can't really see them, but you may hear them in the background. And upstairs in rooms where they can't, they're in their beds. But when they have time and if they're able to, they can come down to these studios and sit and play. They have a lot of famous people that come through these studios that they can meet and greet every so often. And if they are not able to get down here for whatever reason on the bottom floor in the lobby, they have this feeds hundreds of television receivers in this hospital and others that are connected to this hospital here in Atlanta. And they can watch, they can call in like you would any radio station and participate. It's a full working studio with audio and video. So it takes their mind off of, sometimes what's going on in their life, helps out their parents. And they have activities every day. They have full-time staff to maintain it. They've got full automation and play out and music and other things. And so this is what all these hospitals do. And they program themselves locally to what goes on at their hospital, but they also share content amongst themselves. So it's a great cause. And I've been happy to have been part of it. This opened in, I think it was November of 2010.
And I'm sorry.
I'm not the only technical guy involved with it. There are several around the country that volunteer their time to help and do good stuff.
And I'm sorry if you said it already. Do they do shout outs to any of the kids?
Oh, sure. They even put them on the air. I mean, on the air, on the closed circuit, system that the way they hear it is through the speaker in their TV. They also see the video. They even show movies and do other things, in and out of studio. So at night, at 10 o'clock, if there's no one in the studio, which there probably isn't, they'll show movies, maybe Disney movies or other things like that. I just sat in. I was in the studio doing some work on a new video system we're going to put in. And 4 students from university that'll be summer interns were just here. They've had hundreds of interns pass through these studios around the country that have also ended up getting real jobs in broadcast. So it's also a great training facility for people that want to get into the business. That's not why they exist necessarily, but it's a nice sort of symbiotic relationship, you know.
So, Gary, actually, you and I have a number of things to talk about today. The show title at the moment, the working title is Trending Tech in radio broadcasting. We got a lot of things to cover because you go around the world. You go to all the trade shows now that they're starting back up again. You go to broadcasters literally around the world. You do consulting for them, and you're the best question asker I've ever heard in my life because you just ask and ask and ask until you get, every bit of information that you can, and then you go, share that as appropriate, use it in your own consulting, and so forth. Gary, I'll tell you what, we got a couple housekeeping things to take care of right here on This Week in Radio Tech. And so, first of all, let's see. I want to, I should have set this up earlier. Excuse me, I'm producing today, and so, let me see if I can share a screen here because I do have a few things to share with folks. Let's see if we can share screen number 2. And I'm sorry for the, let's see here if we can get that on. There we go. Add to stream. There it is. Hey, I want to mention to you Radio Guide magazine. See, I've got the same one right here. See, it's got the same front right there. Radio Guide magazine, published 6 times a year, every other month, by Ray Topp. And I just want to mention Radio Guide is cool. Why? Because they have more space in here for longer articles. You can really get a full, the full information. The authors have room to write longer articles with pictures. Here's an article from Clark Novak about rationalizing the rack room, AOIP's next phase. And just one article after another with here's one that's full of words. From Greg P. This is Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So lots of things to look at and learn about in the magazine Radio Guide. You can go to radio-guide.com, radio-guide.com, and you can see it online. And you can also sign up to get the paper version like I get. So, I both kill trees and electrons every other month to get my copy of that. Thanks a lot, Ray Topp and Radio Guide. Also, Nautel. Nautel has something going on. Let me click over to Nautel here. They are taking a brief hiatus on their Transmission Talk Tuesdays. So they'd like me to tell you about something they introduced at the NAB show. And that is this new Nautel transmitter series. It's a whole line of transmitters, 10 transmitters altogether. This is their new VX series. More power choices to fit your needs. It does have the secure HTML5 transmitter control. It doesn't rely on Java anymore for that. It has instrumentation, RDS, SNMP, presets built in, of course, phone home for advanced service. It's modular in the 3 to 5 kilowatts for easy servicing and low weight. And I'll tell you, these things are lighter weight than you've seen before. 100% North American design, build, and #1 support. LPFM certified models, long service life design, and a 4-year warranty on the new Nautel series of VX transmitters. I checked these things out at the NAB show, was really impressed by their modularity and by the fact that you can fix about anything with this transmitter without soldering. You can swap out the power modules, for example, with no soldering. You can, of course, swap out the plug-in power supply with no soldering. It's easier to open up and easier to service should one, as they say, take a dump. If it needs to be repaired, you could do it more easily. So check that out from Nautel. The website is nautel.com, and they're going to be starting their Transmission Talk Tuesday roundtables back up in June. So I'll alert you to that when you can go online and sign up for that. The other housekeeping thing we want to mention is today, if the show looks ragged, it's because I'm producing. Suncast he's gambling away his money, his thousands and millions of dollars in Las Vegas. Maybe he's making money. I'm not sure. But there's one cool thing, because I'm using StreamYard today and we're actually using it live. You have the opportunity to comment on today's show. And so we didn't really show these earlier, at least not on the show. So here's what we can do. You can say hi from your Facebook viewing. Here's John Zeckerly. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right, John. Tim Braddock says hello from Moose Jaw, Maine. Robert Scheid says, hello from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Josh Ely from Boise, Idaho checks in. Hello, Josh. Buddy Brown says, lip sync on Facebook is out. And once in a while we get that kind of comment. And Buddy, as you might suspect, I have no control here over lip sync. It is what it is. What I have found when we sometimes do this show live and people say the lip sync is out, I go back and look at the recording and the lip sync is perfect or as good as it's going to be. And so it might be, you might click away and click back and see if when you start streaming it again, if the lip sync gets any better. And I want to ask Gary about lip sync in just a minute because that is an interesting issue in today's streaming. We do have a nice hello from a friend of Gary. From
hey there.
Is it Yuka Acuna?
Yeah, and look, he's holding a microphone in the middle of some speech somewhere.
Yeah. Well, he's big time. He's making a speech.
I don't have a photo of me like that. Yeah.
Let's see. We got something from Tim Braddock. He says he's proposing the studio to Barbara Bush Children's Hospital in Portland, Maine. Well, isn't that cool? Okay. Hope that goes well. And Gary Gardner says, howdy from Hampton Roads, Virginia. So howdy to Gary Gardner. And one more from Buddy Brown. Buddy says, you're always in control. Well, no, I'm not. It just has that look. All right. Gary. Let's talk for a second streaming. Radio stations are doing a lot of streaming. We're going to hear an ad from Broadcast Bionics in a little while about streaming, and that includes streaming. Tell me about, if you want to tell me about streaming, and let's talk for a second about lip sync, how that is kind of an issue sometimes, but at least my experience has been it's typically on the receiving end of things, but there's no lip sync control that we have here. What can you say about that?
I have not experienced in broadcast, in radio, a lip sync issue. I have seen numerous times on even major networks, major broadcast networks, lip sync issues. Certainly when streaming, and almost embarrassing. Like I don't understand why they don't see what we see or hear, and how come they can't fix it. I know they're aware of it. So I've seen it. I've experienced it. It's annoying. But as far as broadcast goes and what broadcasters do streaming, I haven't noticed that. I haven't come across that where that's been a problem. We've had to address it. And I'm with you, Kirk. If it is a problem, it probably is on the receive side or somewhere in the distribution chain. It likely isn't leaving the building that way. It doesn't mean it's okay, because I'm a big, one of my pet peeves is when there's an audio problem on a music or an awards show, right? We all get on the engineering Facebook chat and everybody talks about, oh, did you watch the Grammys last night? Oh, did you hear that? It sounded horrible, this or that. I don't know if I always agree with all the comments, but where they're correct or partially correct, what happens is, and I've been in the TV trucks with the audio guys before, and usually what you'll hear is, it's good when it's leaving here. We can't control all of the head ends and distribution and everything that happens between here and our signal reaching the home. Some people don't even hook up their center speaker. They have different or incorrect configurations. But so one of my pet peeves is when we give up. But as far as radio goes, typically it's okay when it leaves the building based on all of the systems that I've worked with and that I've seen. Yeah. And again, I haven't heard a complaint where there's a mismatch for a radio, visual radio stream. That doesn't mean there hasn't been or there isn't. I just haven't come across it. Sounds like you haven't either. So I don't really know how to answer that other than to say, yeah, it's really important. And if it's a problem and becomes a bigger problem as more stations stream, law of averages, the more we do this and the more stations light up a stream of some kind, the more likely it is, just law of averages, that there could be more problems. And I guess we'll have to figure that out and address it. And I suspect we'll be going back to our CDNs or our distribution channels and try to figure it out. Maybe calling our TV friends and saying, hey, what did you do? What did you think?
And we know they've had some issues with it too, although I think they're even more particular. With streaming, you kind of expect it to maybe not be perfect. But if Buddy Brown says this, lip sync was off, I believe that for him, the lip sync was off. One thing I've noticed, I've done a lot of webinars with my employer, Telos Alliance, and we get comments saying, hey, the webinar looks really pixelated, looks really bad. But there's other people for whom, no, it looks perfect and the recording looks perfect. So that, that obviously that's something that's out of our control. And I've also had lip sync. People say your lip sync is off. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. And the recording that was done on the server where the stream went to looks perfect when we download that recording. And for other viewers, the lip sync was fine. So I gotta believe it's a delivery or playback problem lots of times. But again,
look, variable bit rate. It's like the Netflix effect. You start up a movie, and the first second or two, depending on where you are and what your connection is, may look a little wacky.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you look a little blurry, and then all of a sudden, it's fine, and all the lettering and the characters, everything looks great, and it immediately figures out what it can run at safely on your machine, and it does so. And look, we hear the same things on audio with radio and streaming. That we've heard, like listeners will write in or call in, hey, the stream is breaking up, or there's a problem, but other people don't have that problem. It may be their connection. Like, oh no, my connection's great. Well, maybe. I don't know who you're sharing with. I don't know what cable system you're on. I don't know if you've got a loose or bad connection. I mean, I've in my own personal world thought I've had good connections, and I've had the cable guy come out, and I'm like, well, what's he going to do? And he'll put his meter on it, and he'll show me on a spectrum analysis of the noise, and he'll go, I've seen it. I've had it happen to me. He changed a connector, and all of a sudden, there was no more noise, and the speed looked the same to me, but it fixed a couple of problems. So a noisy or bad connector, an improperly attached connector, some of these things we hear about, and sometimes we think, I don't know about that. Sometimes they're real. So, as I always say, it's a jungle out there, and in the streaming world, video or audio, more complications, but at least for starters, as engineers and media professionals, we can do what we can do to provide great quality audio and great quality video coming out of our stations. And people may watch that and go, well, that's basic 101. Of course, we're going to do great quality audio and video. But the reality is that doesn't always happen. And that's one of the things I go around consulting people on, among other things.
I could be wrong, but it seems like that consumer or semi-pro tools like we're using right here for streaming media, video plus audio, there's not much in terms of granular control of anything, right? Now, in the broadcast television world, there's all kinds of granular control here and there. So I guess what I'm saying is, what we're doing right now, you and me together here on StreamYard and distributing through Facebook, it's a best effort basis. The standards are there. Things are supposed to work a certain way. And if they don't, oh, well, there's not a way to fix them. What I would like to understand better overall is why aren't there like time cues on the audio track and on the video track so that when it gets to the final destination, those can be lined back up. Now, I'm sure there's a million reasons in between why the such, timing cues or tag marks or whatever would be, lost, messed up, whatever. There's lots of opportunity for problem there, but it does seem like there ought to be some way so that when I say, hello, Gary, that, when I say Gary, and my mouth makes a g sound, and you can see that, there ought to be some way at the TV end to recognize that. Maybe that's going to be some artificial intelligence in our television sets. And then, what will ventriloquists do?
Yeah, I think that would be a client-side correction. I think some of those standards are in place, but what happens if you're on a laptop that's got a slower processor and can't render the video as fast as it can the audio? Next thing you know, maybe you've got a couple of frames, you're a couple of frames off, and the lips don't match exactly. Just enough for you to notice. Maybe not enough for you to be fully annoyed and tune out. I mean, anything can happen. So it's a wild world out there. But streaming's important, and I run into more and more stations that are doing it regularly overseas in Europe and Australia and Asia, even Mexico. They've been doing this for a while, and it's pretty intense over there. Some of the setups that they have here in the U.S., it's picking up for sure. And one of your sponsors, Bionics, Broadcast Bionics, obviously makes some great stuff, can automatically switch cameras. I mean, there are a lot of ways to do this now where it's like, I'm going to have to get a big, video switcher or a big TriCaster, and I'm going to have a person there, and we're going to have to do all this stuff, and I'm going to have to insert graphics manually. Yeah, you can do that if you want, but you can also put it in automatic mode and get a system at a relatively, this is all relative, I guess, not to repeat myself, but at a relatively affordable, price point where you can put it in your station, even in Moose Jaw or the forests of Wisconsin, if you want. Hey,
actually, after this commercial break, which is going to be broadcast Bionics, let's talk more about that. What stations other countries are doing? And I remember as long as 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago, when some systems came out to kind of automate the visual radio, and I'm thinking of one called Avra. That is typically sold in a lot of Latin American countries.
Avra, sure.
I tuned in to a few example stations, and of course I didn't understand what was being said, but the video was kind of compelling, actually.
And in Avra, I've seen it sync the music video to the music on the radio. So if the jock isn't speaking, you're actually watching the video. I mean, I've seen some very impressive stuff. Takes some effort though to make it. It takes effort. You got to take effort, and you got to take ownership, and you got to be into it. But if you are, you can do some really, really, really cool stuff.
Hey, folks, we're talking to Gary Kline. He's my guest. He is live from Children's Hospital in Atlanta at the Ryan Seacrest studios there. And we got a comment here. John Zeckerly, where is your sidekick, Chris Tarr, my fellow colleague? Where did he go? And hey, John, thank you for asking about Chris. And I failed to mention Chris at the beginning of the top of the show. Chris is actually hanging out with his wife today. There's I don't know the details. I know that she is in a medical facility right now. Everything's okay as far as I know. But Chris said, it's more important that I be with my wife than that I be on the show. And anyway, keep Chris and his wife Amy in your prayers if you do that sort of thing, and they would appreciate it very much. So Chris will be back next week, as far as I know. So thanks for asking about that, John. All right, hey Gary, our show This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Bionics. And if I can just there we go. We're going to hear from Bionics and be right back. More from Gary Kline on trending technologies in radio broadcasting from literally around the world.
Welcome to the Bionics Studio. The Bionics Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email, together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These could be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
Thanks so much to Broadcast Bionics for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Contact them at bionic.radio. Yes, radio is a top-level domain. You should probably look into that. Bionic.radio. All righty. Gary, got anything to say about our sponsor?
That little, I don't know if that was a minute or 2 minutes, but that commercial right there, I mean, that kind of sums up a lot of the stuff we've been talking about streaming. And I know the title of the show had the word opportunity in it. if you saw some of the studios and some of the things that they're doing and that they can do, that company in particular, there are others out there. They may or may not all do the same thing, and they may overlap here or there on some of the features they offer. That's where things are headed. I mean, I say headed. There are companies like the BBC and Global in the United Kingdom and Southern Cross Austereo in Australia and other places here in the United States that are using that system and that are using one or more features you saw there. Obviously, they're broadcasting video, maybe doing auto camera switching, but some of these other social media functions you saw, they're doing it too, like Skype and Zoom, and putting those calls on the air automatically, and finding ways to integrate the audience more into the production, and finding more new and interesting ways to take that production and distribute it both terrestrial and then, through streaming, and then perhaps on demand, and perhaps converted to some form of audio or audio video podcast. And then for the managers out there, obviously finding ways to monetize it. People are still trying to figure some are still trying to figure out their way around that, and some are quite successful at it, and others are working hard at it to make it successful for them, because we should never forget that while we're in the entertainment and media business, we want to do great work and put out great product. And as media guys and engineers and gals, we want to help them do that. At some point, there is this, financial factor in there. We do good things sometimes because we just do good things, but ultimately the station or your company has to pay the bill. So, that's an important component of this. How do you, monetize it? But, streaming is just one of several different things that we're looking at now in the industry in terms of either expanding what we do and the kind of content we generate, and or finding ways to be more efficient, or freeing people up to help do these things. You're a radio station or you're a radio company, and you need more people dedicated to Adobe Premiere or Final Cut, or take your pick of editor to do more and produce more video content, whether it's shooting camera or editing or just publishing it or whatever. Well, there are technologies now to speed up things and workflow and save time. So not that people are going to lose their job or be eliminated out of jobs, but although that's happened over the years, so we can't ignore that, but certainly to free them up to do other things, including as you know too well, Kirk, because you go around talking about this yourself, cloud technologies, improved workflows, improved automation, reducing rack room and studio sizing so that we have more room perhaps to do other things in the building, or simply to be able to move to another building where we don't need as much square footage and we're spending less on that, and we can take that savings and apply it to other, useful things that we need to do to survive in the industry. I just got back. As you mentioned, I travel around. I just got back from Sweden. I spent a couple of days at a thing called Radio Days Europe, and I listened to the guys from Spotify and YouTube and the car manufacturers and the heads of programming of some of the big companies out there like the BBC talk about, and they all had common things to say. One of them, some had different things to say, and that makes it interesting. But, one common thread was the fact that radio is up against big tech, audio, streaming, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube is one of the largest, sources for, music discovery and podcasts, and in addition to some other big companies out there that do that. So, we're battling those people. We're battling for the dashboard to protect radio's presence in the car, and being up front for people that turn their ignition on and want to see the radio and Apple CarPlay and Android and all that stuff. So the more we can devote to resources we can devote as an industry to say battle or, compete, I guess is a better way to say it, compete against those things, the better off we are. So some of these technologies that we're looking at now, that are out now and over the next, I think, 2 to 3 years will become even more prevalent and more easy to purchase and put your hands on. I think it's going to help us do that, I guess, both in workflow and production, and also freeing people up to do more things. I mean, look, Kirk, you remember in Nashville, we put a system in at the Nashville campus, which is no longer there now, but we had one of the first visual radio systems in there that switched by camera automatically. It was a little bit of the Wild West, getting it to interface and getting it to work. Today, you can go buy one that'll interface immediately with any of the big audio over IP, manufacturers.
Yeah, it's got AOIP drivers either built in or
we didn't have that. As an example, today you can buy cameras anywhere from a few dollars to a few hundred to a few thousand that will pan, tilt, zoom, autofocus, and talk to your camera switching system with AI, artificial intelligence, potentially identify who's on camera, put the proper lower third behind them.
Yeah.
Things along those lines. 12, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, if you could get your hands on those things as a radio broadcaster and could afford it, it still was a little, clunky and expensive. Prices keep coming down. Technology keeps improving. And as the market, like any product, I guess, as the market demands this, the manufacturers that we know and some we don't know, but we'll get to know better, are rising to the occasion. So kind of an exciting time, really, if you think about it. At least I see that as I travel around and, as you said, visit radio stations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
For sure.
I see radio stations being able to pretty easily produce events with some of the technology available now. For example, the very platform that we're using right now, StreamYard, we'd used this platform a few weeks ago for the SBE annual membership meeting. And we didn't have cameras to run cables across the floor and have a multi-camera shoot, but we had a multi-camera shoot. We bought cheap tripods. I borrowed people's iPhones and invited them to the StreamYard channel like we're using right now. And I sat there on a laptop and switched the different cameras, and each camera, each phone was independently talking to the StreamYard servers, presenting its video to StreamYard. I only used one audio source, that being the mixer for the room, and I was able to. And I'm not saying I did a great job, but you were there. We had a 3-camera shoot of that. Now I could just as well have been a radio station and done that, whether it was a ball game, a little league game, some event, a parade, let's say you have a live band at a car dealer remote. You can produce that and have it on your stream. But I got a couple questions or annoyances or suggestions. To me, it's critical that if your radio station has an app that's going to run on your phone, it's critical that app keeps playing even if it's not in the foreground. There are some apps, like if I'm not mistaken, at least on my phone, Facebook. I can watch a video on Facebook, but as soon as I bring another app to the foreground, the Facebook app stops playing the audio. Well, that's one thing I really like about, I pay $11 a month for YouTube Premium, because I can choose something to mostly listen to, and then drop it to the background while I check my email or check my Facebook or do something else. To me, it's critical that, since radio is used to doing audio and the video part is like an add-on that now some people are doing, as opposed to television where the video is always the storyteller and the audio is along for the ride. I like the fact that audio-centric video audio production, I can typically not watch the video. In fact, there are videos that I want to watch on YouTube that I end up avoiding because I know I will have to keep my eyes on the screen in order to understand the full story. And I tend to avoid those if I need to be doing something else at the same time, whether it's taking a shower or cooking something or whatever. I tend to choose the things that I know the audio is all I really have to hear. Anyway, those are some thoughts about apps and how people might be using them for the future. Any thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. But for all of the Kirks in the world that probably want what I've learned from developers, talking like to people that tune in over there. And I'm a TuneIn Premium subscriber, by the way. That's how I get some of my audio in the car. What I've learned is for every Kirk out there that wants the audio to keep playing, there's probably somebody else that maybe wants the option for it to not play. And/or Kirk, when you leave the app, should it stop and remember where you were, and when you start playing again, pick up where you were, like in a sporting event?
Yeah.
Or should it start real time from wherever you are in time when you pick it back up, like a pause and play again, or stop and start again from current position in time? So a whole bunch of different ways you come at these things, but totally agree. And a really well-written app, I think, will in settings even give you a couple of those basic options. My pet peeve are all the radio stations that have websites that look like another website, don't really keep all their content up to date, and just scrape off of, common websites. So what you see is a lot of, national news. Some do a really good job though. there are some local people out there, maybe I should say more than some, that do great local content, great local news reporting and sports reporting, archive all the audio from all the high school games they do, and on and on and on, the things that they have, a right to present. And so I want to be careful. There are some people doing a great job out there and making money at it, but there's plenty that aren't. And again, going back to producing content, one little video a month you did on an iPhone and then slapped on your Facebook page, as things heat up and there's more competition, I'm not sure that cuts it.
Yeah.
That cuts it anymore. And that's just me. Easy for me to say. I don't have to pay people to do it. I don't have to feed mouths, and keep food on the table for 30 or 40 employees at a radio cluster in a given city or wherever, or hundreds or thousands of people. But, I think it's important. And again, as I go around and meet with people and meet with station owners, which is typically who I work with, or stakeholders, these are the things that are on their mind. They're like, hey, what about this? What about that? I see this. How can I do that? How can I do video without spending a fortune? How can I edit? What do I need? With a $50 a month subscription with Adobe, $49 a month, we can give you an editor, that'll do pretty much everything the big boys do. In fact, they use a lot of those same editing tools. What you need is a way to grab video, and you need, again, the resources and people and somebody to take ownership of it and make sure they stay current with it and up to date with it. Your point, Kirk, about the SBE meeting, totally, right? And these tools weren't here just even a few years ago. There's at least half a dozen, probably more, great audio and video packages out there on the internet in the cloud where you can have 4 or 5 people, do a show, a podcast or a show, and it'll record all the audio locally, bring it to a location that you can get your hands on it so you have pristine audio. Not to mention you can have the actual mixed audio if you want. You can mix in the cloud and produce shows with people from anywhere, as long as they have a decent mic and a decent interface into their laptop. No different than how many morning shows and afternoon shows and other shows got put together during COVID around the world, and how even today, people, even before COVID, but certainly today more than before probably, people voice track from home. But that takes us to another level and step, and that is, so where does that all bring us? Well, as you know, again, Kirk, and I think over, again, the next couple of years, we're going to see this really pick up speed and become easier to implement and cheaper to implement, but it's cloud-based technology. These things we hear about, Dockers, containers. I mean, there's going to be a day you could do some of this today, but I think in a short amount of time, maybe within the year, maybe a little longer, maybe a little shorter, you're going to be able to take a lot of the common things that you do in a studio and put them into software, potentially on premise. Well, certainly on premise, I would think, potentially in the cloud or hybrid, mix of cloud and premise, where your camera system, your phone system, your console mixing, perhaps the clocks in your studio, and a lot of these things that you do now in hardware will be in software, maybe in the same box, maybe in a different box, or maybe across a couple of boxes. So much less rack space taken up, much less energy probably used, and an easier to maintain facility. And if you're a company that has multiple locations, clusters, if you will, in different cities, then all of a sudden we're looking at a centralized or regionalized setup that becomes quicker and easier to manage and to distribute content amongst. We do some of these things now, but my point is it's going to become, I think, easier to implement down the road, even for the guys that it was complex for, meaning you're in a few markets, you don't have a lot of engineering help, it seems maybe overwhelming, and you don't really know who to call or who to talk to or how many different companies you need to talk to and how to put this all together. I think here in not the too distant future, that's going to become a whole lot easier to do. And you'll be able to call your local vendor, dealer, or a particular company and get the information you need to make this happen, and to take different pieces of your station, different building blocks, if you will, and put them together. And that's where I think things are headed. And, you were talking earlier about no soldering and replacing modules in a Nautel transmitter. Not that we're not there now with computers and hard drives and replacing a drive. We don't go in and solder on our computers. I know that. But we're going to have modular, pieces of software that almost plug and play, like Pro Tools or some audio editing software. You want, you want a Duro or you want a Neve certain compressor. You go buy it online or a Waves plugin and you load it in as a VSD or something along those lines. And now you have that, it even looks like it in software. I think we're getting to a point where we're going to be able to plug and play. Oh, I want a six line SIP, hybrid from Telos, and I want 6 faders from Axia, or Lavo, you showed them in your ad, or I want this or that, and I want to blend all these things together and put together my station. I don't know if it's in the next year or 2 or 3, but I think we're going to get to a point where we're going to be able to do that. It may cost you some money, on a monthly fee. You may move from a capital expenditure model to an operating expenditure model.
Sure.
But I think we're going to be there. Again, some of this you can do now. I don't want to say you can't, but I think it's going to become easier, and certainly more likely you'll be able to combine the products of different companies that are going to build. Look, I don't think I'm giving you any secrets. I was at NAB a few weeks ago, like you were. I walked by the Wide Orbit booth. I'm not paid to say this, but they were showing me Wide Orbit version 6 running in the cloud and using Linux. So who's to say you can't take that one day and bolt it into a box that's running other things, or a server, Linux server, whether on premise or the cloud or hybrid. I understand people are nervous about losing internet connections and all of that great stuff. We're seeing.
Yep. And Gary just mentioned losing internet connection and he froze. All right. Tell you, we'll bring.
There were others. Your video froze on me. Sorry, Kurt.
Actually, it's your video that froze on me. So there.
Oh, I'm sorry. My fault.
It's
my
okay.
fault. My fault.
And actually, that is a perfect segue to talk about, after this commercial break, to talk about the scary things about going to cloud or data center based operations, because I've been talking about the benefits of this for actually years now at NABs, at conferences, at SBE meetings, and there are some downsides that are there's a few that people tend to address, or that people tend to bring up. And I'm not saying they're red herrings, but they're addressable. They are workable and fixable. But there's some that are a little more challenging. So you and I are going to see if we can talk about that in just a minute. Our show. Yeah, go ahead, Gary. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Scary things.
Scary things. Yes, we're going to talk about scary things next. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Tools. Broadcast Tools makes something that, look, I know it looks simple and easy, and it's something that you're going to need. You're going to need this functionality, even if your operations are in the cloud. Now, hear me out. This is the Broadcast Tools Pro Mix 4. It's a little 4-channel mixer with USB, and it will mix microphones or instrument level things or line level things. It'll mix up to 4 things together. One of those can be what's coming out of your computer, because it has a USB connection to your laptop or computer. It's a mono device. And when you're at home, when you're at a parade, when you're at a ball game, your audio is typically going to be mono, right? You don't need stereo. You can have simple connections, half the number of cables. You can send, okay, I know I'm going to get in trouble. You can send a disc jockey out to hook this thing up, and it's probably going to be right. It also has a built-in audio limiter. So when your sports person says, he shoots, he scores, really loud, it's okay. It's not going to be a problem. So the Pro Mix 4, if you have a home studio, and let's say that you have guests come over to your studio, you need to hear it. And let's say that you're mixing your show in the cloud. Well, you got to have this thing that I tend to call super mix minus. You're going to send audio to the cloud. The cloud is going to send audio back to you, and it can't send your audio back to you. In other words, you can't hear a mix of what you're doing. You got to bring what's in the cloud back to you and mix that in the headphones along with your local stuff. Did you get that? Well, the Pro Mix 4 is the ideal platform to get that done. You can have your live mix without delay locally and talk to your compadres, talk to the other people on your show right there with the Pro Mix 4. It's easy to hook up. You can send it home with your morning show talent, your afternoon show talent, your traffic person, whoever's doing the traffic reporting, and they will have this high quality mixer with high quality mic preamp with headphone amplifiers built in, with mixing available on the headphone amp, all kinds of cool things, including an IFB audio input with level adjustment, a mix minus output if you need to have a local hybrid or codec hybrid. That's built in. It has an on-air tally warning light relay output. That's something you don't get with the consumer style of mixers that you might take home. It has remote channel control and status via terminal block connectors. And it can also drive, if you're doing sports remotes or other things where you have several talent, it can drive multiple of their AHR1 Plus headphone system. So I'm talking about the Broadcast Tools ProMix 4 4-channel mixer with USB. If you get these, you won't be wasting your money because you're going to need them even if you move a lot of your operations into cloud-based operations. You got to have something at your studio. Now, yes, if it's a one-person studio, you may not need a mixer. But as soon as you're going to mix a couple things together live, local, without delay, and you need to hear it, you got it with the Pro Mix 4 4-channel USB mixer. And where can you get it? Well, of course, from Broadcasters General Store at the website bgs.cc or call them at 352-622-7700. Hey, I was chatting online with Jessica Shute just the other day. And what a great family operation they have there. What a great, beautiful, friendly operation. You're going to love dealing with Broadcasters General Store. If you haven't dealt with them, you need to try them. Give them a try. They have always done me right with excellent pricing, really sharp pencils on their quotes, and they can usually tell me exactly when something is going to arrive. So check them out, please. At Broadcasters General Store, I really think you're going to like what they have to tell you, and I enjoy dealing with them at Broadcasters General Store. Again, that's bgs.cc or 352-622-7700. Gary Kline is my guest today, and Gary, you've moved around. Where did you go? You're muted. Hang on, let me unmute you at my end. There you go.
RH20. Well, am I muted?
Yeah, you're fine now.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I thought I'd move back into the studio since they're doing here. Can you see me?
I don't know if you're on. Yeah, I don't know if you're on Wi-Fi or what, but we're getting a little cut out there.
Are you? Can you hear me okay now?
Oh, of course it's okay now, but who knows?
Okay.
Gary is coming to us live. If you're just tuning in, Gary's cool. It's a real by golly radio studio. It looks like an SAS console. It's got chairs all around. It's got RE20s. It is a hot rockin' flame throwing studio. And it's at a hospital, children's hospital.
Yeah. So, all right. We all good? Can you hear me okay now that I repositioned?
Yeah. And hey, if you want to tilt down, if you want to tilt down some, that'd be cool too. So we wanted to address, we talk about the positive things. Hey, you might be able to lower your monthly costs. You might be able to have redundancy because you can have, there are software systems in place at data centers to instantly move operations from one server to another if something, hangs up, catches, dies, whatever. I mean, these are the same systems that handle financial transactions 24/7, that handle other media 24/7. Data centers are getting good at this stuff to even where some data centers now are even making available PTP clock, or their system clocks are synchronized to PTP clock. In other words, they're getting more media aware, media centric. Media is already distributed. It's being produced. I've seen all kinds of demos of people editing video on servers that are hundreds, if not thousands of miles away with really low latency, acceptable, interaction. And so we talk about the positives of all this, that you're using, not what consumer is not the word I'm looking for. Your commodity servers, because one server acts just about like another. An HP and a Dell, they both execute, server software the same way. And so there's lots of upsides to doing this. Lots of other industries have gone to this kind of model for working. Hey, the very platform we're using right now is in a server farm somewhere. I don't know where, but it works. And I need very little I could produce this on an iPad, right? With the same way I'm producing it now on a PC. I'm looking at a browser window right now. I'm not running an app on my PC to do this. So Gary, lots of upsides. People do bring up downsides. Of course, one of them is, well, what happens if my internet goes down? What do you do then, hotshot? And of course, if your programming is all in the cloud, It doesn't matter if your internet goes down. Your programming is still being executed in that cloud instance. And then the idea is from the cloud to your transmitter, it's more than one path. You're going to have at least dual path. So at your transmitter site, that's where you want 2 different internet connections going on there. And if you work hard, you can do that. To your streaming CDN, well, it may be in the same building as your stuff. It may be somewhere else. You want dual path there, main and backup. And all the CDNs I know of offer main site, backup site. You stream to 2 places at the same time. So anyway, address this question, if you will, about, well, the internet might go down.
Yeah. Great thing comes up all the time when you start talking about cloud. Well, let's start with the data center. So, right, Kurt, if you work with Amazon or any of the other Amazon type companies out there, call it rack space, take your pick. They have multiple servers in multiple locations. Depending on how much you're willing to pay, they can protect you around the world from an outage. Now, to be fair, have we all read in the news over the last 10 years about some amazing Amazon or Microsoft 365 outage that takes a bunch of people out? Yeah, very rare, very unlikely. Probably happens less than you have a problem in your rack room. And they have air conditioning and power and staffs and engineers and round the clock support to take really good care of what they've got, better than, most radio or broadcast companies probably do. I mean, if you're BBC or you're ABC television, yeah, you've got a great data center and rack room. CNN, sure, you can do that. You can afford to do that, but most can't and don't. And so you're pretty well protected there. But the last mile, your internet circuit to your building, whether a cable modem, fiber, MPLS, whatever, it can go out. Look, I mean, to be fair, I mean, I've been in buildings that have really expensive MPLS circuits to the radio station that go through a router in the basement that gets a flood in a hurricane, loses power, and now their internet is out. So it can happen. It's rare. And like you said, Kirk, if you work hard, you can get another internet connection. I know now there are several good 5G hotspot accessories out there with T-Mobile and AT&T and Verizon and, I'm sure O2 and Vodafone and people around other carriers around the world, Telstra in Australia, that can provide really high speed internet, sometimes better. And in fact, some are using it as primary, better than what you've got. But with the right router or SD-WAN configuration, you can have one or more internet connections, wired, wireless, into your building to protect you. But okay, let's just say the inevitable happens and somehow your internet goes out. As you said, Kirk, the answer to that is you have on-premise server. Maybe it's a playout system at your transmitter site that if it loses connectivity, its umbilical cord is cut, can have maybe 2 or 3 days of music or log. Well, it can have many days of music, but it has a couple of days of log already in it advanced. It's already synced up and will keep playing for some considerable amount of time before you need to get there and maybe update it. And frankly, could go playing 24/7 for weeks and weeks. It might be and what we call an evergreen, music or spot or promo log.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think companies are working on this already. Is it radio.cloud?
Radio.cloud for sure. But
so they have a small appliance that goes at your transmitter site that holds a certain amount of programming there to handle brief outages of internet.
And RCS has their cloud backup system and others are working on things. But, honestly, even before that, I mean, and people do this now. I know that. And I know I used to do it at my previous job. I mean, if you're in New Orleans, the risk of losing internet to your transmitter site or Texas or some hurricane prone area, it can happen. So we used to have servers, playout servers for, say, Wide Orbit or Scott Studios, or it could be BE Audio Vault, for instance, or take your pick. Okay. I'm just bringing up some examples, and they would be synced and they would have the exact same log and music library across the internet that the studio had. And if it lost its umbilical, it would keep playing. Now, that's one way to do it. With the cloud and the ability to have all of your stations in the cloud and MPX over IP, you can feed directly to your transmitter site now and not even need all the studio gear, although you still can do that if that makes you more comfortable. Eventually, we may head to a spot point where many things are in the cloud, feeding your transmitter sites directly. So there are answers to losing internet, and it's not the end of the world, and you won't be off the air. So, that's the deal there. If you think you're going to lose your internet for more than 2 or 3 days at a time, or that happens to you or has happened to you, then you need to really, and I'm stating the obvious, you really need to think about a backup internet solution that'll protect you against that.
So I think it's fair to say that, and look, I know your mileage may vary, but it seems to me that everywhere, and I own stations in very rural areas, we're getting fiber to one of our most rural studio sites, and I happened to see the guys connecting the fiber up a couple days ago on Monday of this week. There are a couple of C-Spire trucks out there. It's kind of funny. There's a big honking fiber cable that's gone right by our studio for years, and they're just and we call them and say, "Hey, can we get a fiber?" They'd say, "No, we don't offer it in your area." Well, apparently they finally got around to marketing and selling their fiber in our. What it was is fiber backbone that goes all around the state of Mississippi, and it goes up one side and across and then down the other side of Mississippi, and it was all put in years ago by another company, and then C-Spire bought it, and anyway, we're finally able to get fiber. Now we've had cable there for years, and it's been kind of unreliable. So we're gonna have at least one reliable form of internet. In our station in Hawaii, we had fiber from day one. In the whole time, in 3.5 years, it's been off for 6 hours. So, and that was when a hurricane came through at that point.
Yeah, Kirk, no, those are great points. And you're really sort of illustrating what we've been talking about, what you said. If you work hard, you can find alternate methods to have a backup internet. Look, and it's not just about what we do. If the internet goes out, your phone system's probably VoIP or internet-based. You're going to lose your phones.
Right.
Your traffic people are going to lose their ability to do what they are doing. Maybe it's electronic invoicing. Maybe they're on something like Marketron Cloud. There are many things that go bad if you lose internet. And I don't see people waking up every day going, wow, I don't know if we should have a phone system on the internet because God, internet could go, so, and yes, it's more critical that we stay on the air with our music and programming than maybe a phone line working at the station if you have to take your pick and prioritize things. But we rely on internet for a lot of things today. And so it behooves us to make sure we're really well grounded and have backup. And if it's like, well, we don't really have backup, well, you probably have a cellular signal from some carrier there. And with a Cradle Point or similar device provided by your cellular company, you can have backup.
Now, that said, you may have a hard time getting good internet to your transmitter site. I get that. There's a major transmitter site here.
But it's better than it was 12 or 15 years ago, Kirk. We have fiber. You can do Ubiquity, any number of things.
There's a good-sized multi-FM transmitter site literally down the road from me. I've flown it with my drone. It's a great tower site. Lots of FMs are on it, and the best they can still get right there is DSL. Well, to me, that's stupid on the part of the internet providers. They got several customers waiting there to give them money every single month, and they're not getting it. But what I'm getting at is it gets better and better. And of course, everybody has 950 shots out there or IP radio shots. My point, though, is if you can't get good internet to your transmitter, there's no reason why you can't have your playout system and stuff in the cloud come back to your now smaller footprint office and still 950 megahertz out to your transmitter site if that's what you've been doing. Of course, you can still do that.
Absolutely. For sure, Kirk. No doubt. And there's also no reason why you couldn't have a little playout box at your transmitter site connected to the internet to get what it can get and stay synced. Remember, it's not downloading your music library every day, all day. It's only looking for the changes, which are usually 60-second spots.
I think a lot of radio engineers may not be aware of what many TV stations are doing, and that is they're doing, I forget the right word for it, it's where they switch the commercials in, master control in a different city. They have master control hubs. So
master control, the JMCs.
I've done weather, at the NBC affiliate here in Nashville. They don't have a master control in their studio. There's not a single commercial does not live at their facility. It's all switched in Atlanta. So the video from the local news, my weather forecast would go down to Atlanta. They get commercials plugged in there, come back to the transmitter site. And by the way, the studio and the transmitter, 1,000 feet apart on two different little hilltops. And the only time that they had the finger on the button ready to bypass the long IP connection was during the Super Bowl. Super Bowl, engineer was there with his finger ready on the button in case something happened. Otherwise, and I'm sure it went out, but I was never aware of it going out ever. So, it's...
Look at television. I mean, they call them Remy's. But more and more, a lot of sporting events you see, not the Super Bowl necessarily, though they did this with the Olympics, but they had 10 gig. I think they were 10 gig connections back to Connecticut. But they're remoting cameras and video and audio from venues so that the support staff is smaller and they don't have multi-million-dollar trucks out at these sites. And they bring it all back to a master control room, like the Pac-12 does. I mean, everybody's doing it now. Mm-hmm. If you're watching some volleyball game, regional volleyball game, there's a good chance that thing's being brought back. Those cameras and ISO feeds are being brought back over in a strong and robust internet connection, and they trust that. So it's a little different now than it was 8, 9, 10 years ago. And the other thing that I'll say that I always say when we do TWiRT, as an engineer or a media professional or somebody in the technical side of things, always be prepared. We talked about cloud and automation and potentially Linux servers and putting, sort of bolting things together, smaller footprints, streaming technologies, problems with streaming, things to think about, visual radio. I always say this. You may or may not think that matters now to you because you're in a station or a small city where these things aren't discussed. But someday your station manager or their boss or the owner of a company, might be the station manager, same person, they're going to be at a convention. They're going to be talking to a buddy. They're going to come to you if they haven't already, and they're going to ask, like, hey, what about this cloud stuff? Hey, what about this cloud playout stuff? Hey, what about mixing in the cloud? I hear we can get rid of our consoles. Hey, I think here we can do everything on iPads from home, or whatever they say. It may not be exactly what we can do or can't do, but it's going to be, somewhere between very technical and accurate and, layman's terms that we expect sometimes a manager to have, because after all, they don't necessarily train and learn like we do. Some do. Your guy, your buddy and my buddy, Larry Kirk, he's very technical and he owns radio stations like you do, but they're not all like that. And so they're going to come to you and ask you questions. They may even ask you, how much does that cost? Or who are the companies that do that? Or I want to know more about it. Make sure you're prepared. Study up on these things. Google's your friend. The SBE courses are a great avenue. The Audio Engineering Society is helpful. Kirk, I may be forgetting some of the places they can turn to, but there are a lot of learning resources. The NAB's got great resources. Your engineer buddies and friends are great resources. The conventions, if you can make it to one, or even a local state association show, are great resources. And understand what these things are. We mentioned a couple of manufacturers tonight as examples. There are others. Know who they are. If you are asked to list out some of them or get pricing, who would you call and where would you go? I wouldn't wait until that moment happens. I would get into that now so you're ready. And so if you ever are asked, if your phone system goes out in your studio, your old Telos 1x6 or something, or 6x1, or your old SPH3, some people still use those. Your old Gettner goes out, your single line or something, and your manager wants a new system, or your program director is pushing for a new system. And they're like, what about the cloud thing? Or what about these appliances? Or what about? Or they don't even ask, but it's your duty and obligation to maybe give them some options. Mm-hmm. Know where you go and know what that might cost and know how that would be set up. I'm talking a bit generically, but I am real serious when I say it looks real good when you're ready with answers or almost ready with answers and you can get them quickly and put them in front of people. It doesn't look as good when you can't. So
that's the benefit of watching. Yeah, that's the benefit of watching this show, so that we can at least make you informed about, hey, here's a technology, a technique. Here's some products you need to be aware of. Here's what other broadcasters are doing. As you've said, in other countries, they're using a lot more video. Gary, we got tip of the week coming up in just a minute. Gary, you know what this is, right? Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Do you ever use these?
Of course, all the time.
I'm talking about the Studio Hub adapters that are now available from Angry Audio at angryaudio.com. You don't want to use a substitute because they suck. What you want to use is the original.
Is that technical?
Yeah, that's a technical word. Yeah, actually, Gary, you know what's actually pretty amazing about what Dan Braverman did and the tradition that's carried on by Mike Dosh at Angry Audio. This is a flexible audio wire. This is a standard, shielded twisted pair audio wire, and they've figured out how to make it go into an RJ45 connector reliably. And you try doing that, and you can't do it, reliably with, building thousands of them, but they certainly did at Studio Hub. They use the same jigs. Now that Angry Audio owns Studio Hub, they use the same jigs, the same people, same factory to produce these high quality products that you're so used to, remembering Studio Hub doing. And then they're innovating. This is the headphone disconnector, right? So this is, you've got, I mixed and matched sizes. I didn't even mean to do that. Let's put the quarter inch with the quarter inch tip ring sleeve for your headphones here, right? And if you get up and walk away, it just comes apart. It's magnetic. In fact, I can even show that on the screen here, Gary. There's the headphone disconnector product from Angry Audio, and they got there's what it looks like. There's why it works. It's kind of like a MagSafe style connector. And Gary, I'm sure that you have never gotten up and walked away with headphones around your neck.
Oh,
or on your head.
Yeah. I've never done that in my life. Yeah, right.
They got this new product. It's called the Disconnect Gizmo. So you actually just put it's like a MagSafe headphone connector. It's cool as can be. And so this is a new product from Angry Audio. You need to check them out at angryaudio.com. And they got all kinds of cool stuff there at Angry Audio. In fact, I'll show you a couple more here if I can figure out how to switch the camera back to me. Here is their headphone gizmo. This is the beautiful headphone amp. You can lay it, on top of the console. It comes with little rubber feet, or you can screw it to underneath the console or underneath the shelf, wherever looks good to you. And you hook it up with, the Studio Hub standard. It'll even get power over that if you want to, or you can inject power right there. That power injector will run 3 of these over the Studio Hub standard. Got both kinds of headphone connectors, quarter inch and 3.5 millimeter. And then they carry on a lot of the Studio Hub line. Like here's a Studio Hub headphone amplifier. A lot of folks love this one. It's in a Decora style faceplate connector, and so you can just drop that into a little box, put a Decora plate over it, and you have a gorgeous headphone amplifier, again with the Studio Hub stuff on there. Powered, you can power, I believe, 4 of these daisy chain style. So check them out from angryaudio.com. Don't get mad, get angry. All right, good. Got that taken care of. Hey, I want to remind you that we're also sponsored by our friends at Max Connect Wireless to give you, as Gary talked about earlier, a backup connection, or maybe your only connection to a transmitter site or to a live remote. Here's Gary Morrill to tell you why it's so good.
I'm Gary Morrill, Midwest Regional Director of Engineering for Alpha Media. When I first spoke with Josh Bone about Max Connect, he told me they'd work great for remote transmitter sites where connectivity was a challenge. And he's absolutely right. We even have sites where we're using this as a backup to our STL using Max Connect's dual carrier option, and it works perfectly. We also have times where we need to be able to get out to a venue where it's kind of challenging because everybody and his brother is trying to stream video at the same time, like at a big sporting event. And you know what? Our data gets through every time because it's prioritized packet data. It works for us. It'll work for you. Max Connect. Check it out.
Max Connect Wireless. Go to Max Connect. I know it's spelled funny. MAXXKONNECT. MaxConnect.com or Max Connect Wireless. And hey, choose your favorite carrier. If you got a carrier that covers your transmitter site or your market really well, you can go with one of them. And just, but what it is, you get your SIM card. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Look at that. I'm everywhere. Gosh, let's jump off of that. Okay. Let's get right back to, oh God, more of me. Here's this is a 4G LTE modem, but the secret is the SIM card that goes inside that hooks you up and tells the carrier, I'm important. I want all of my data and a fixed IP address. That's how they actually talk to each other. Gary, did you know that's how they talk to each other?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it. And Gary there from Alpha, very convincing. The only thing he needs to do next is do it from the transmitter site.
Yeah. Do a live remote from the transmitter. We've used these for TWiRT shows.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and we used them for SBE national meetings too. When I thought my, one of the big 4 carriers phone was going to make a great hotspot, and it did, except it dropped a lot of packets. And so we ended up going with the Max Connect, which technically had a slower speed, although it was adequate for live video. And we did, far as we know, didn't drop any packets. I mean, it was all good the whole time, hour and a half. So thanks a lot to Max Connect and Josh Bone for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Gary, you and I could talk a whole lot longer, and we have had a couple sessions where we have talked a lot longer. We've got to air those one time. It'll be a 5-part series on This Week in Radio Tech.
Look, I hope some of this has been interesting to people. We didn't get down into the weeds too much, but all of these are important topics. Go home and, well, maybe you're watching from home. Google cloud-based radio automation and see what comes up and read all about it and look what all the companies are doing.
I was going to ask you for a tip, and I'd still like to hear a tip. My personal tip, and I try to let people know this, is I've been doing a lot of webinars for Telos Alliance, which is involved with container software, cloud-based stuff. You can run it on-premise, or you can run it in a data center or in a public cloud area. But my point is this is something that we as engineers need to learn about now so that we have some of the answers. We have the lingo to ask and talk about it so it doesn't blindside us in a year and a half or 2 years when our GM says, I hear we can operate fully from the cloud. Can you make that happen in the next 60 days? Well, if you're up on it, then you can.
Kirk, I'm headed on Tuesday to Paris. Thursday and Friday, I'm in two days of all-day sessions with the CTOs and CIOs and CEOs of the top radio companies from around the world. I think there'll be 25 or 30 people there. I'm not sure how many exactly. I think in that range. And the agenda is about how to monetize digital, how to fight, big tech. One of the topics is the use of 5G in media and how that may change things. And we're going to have these sort of personal discussions amongst ourselves. And if anybody wants to know more about it, they can Google Paris Radio Show Red Tech Summit, and you can find out about it. And we'll be talking about these things, and these things are important to people. That's why these people are coming from all around the world to visit France and sit down at the table and talk. It's not like a panel. It's not where people get on stage and then there are people in the audience. It's more of a round table among the chief technical and chief information and CEOs of the big groups.
Yeah. I think Gary's Wi-Fi just decided to...
Some people from the U.S. will be there. And we'll be talking about these things. And the point I'm trying to make is these topics are really important to people that have a lot of decision-making, power within their organizations that are big. So these things matter. And like you said, Kirk, be ready with the lingo, be thinking about these things now, because pretty soon it's going to catch up with you and somebody's going to ask you a question. And it's best if you at least have the beginnings of a response or where to turn.
Gary, I want to give you just a second to talk about what you are doing to help broadcasters. You very kindly give us...
oh, my God. Look, that's the website.
Some of your time. Yeah, there's your Kline Consulting website. So you operate this company, Kline Consulting.
Yeah, that's me in France and another thing that we did a couple of years ago and technical people. But so right, I consult people with technical due diligence, acquisitions, obviously, drone technology, which I'm a big believer in for RF measurements and studio design and a whole number of other things. A lot of times I'm helping people understand technology, and either what they can do to make it more robust or better, stronger in their facility, plan out their expenditures over the next few years, help them understand what they should be thinking about. Some of the things we spoke about on this session of TWiRT, and at a higher level, dealing with I always deal with engineers at some point, but it usually starts with an owner or a chief operating officer, people that want to have a second opinion or an understanding of what's going on in the industry. So as you said, Kirk, I spend a lot of time doing the best I can. I'm just a human being like everybody else, but to try to pull it all together, because it's hard. It's not easy. If anybody is watching and they're like, man, you guys talk about this stuff and you're in the loop and these things. But for me, I sit in my office. I don't get to go to the NAB, or I don't get to go to IBC in Amsterdam, or I don't get to go, to Austin or New Orleans or wherever my state association show is being held. I just know what I can see online and I do the best I can. Absolutely. I know it's not easy. That's why guys like me, and I'm not the only one who does what I do what we do. Kirk, why you do, and like you said, why you do TWiRT and why there's BDR and why there's all this online stuff. I mean, it's certainly I would think, a bit easier now than it was before we had online streaming. In the year 2000, we didn't get on YouTube probably and watch a bunch of broadcast engineering training seminars and things like that. So, we hoped we had the NAB handbook, and I don't know what we did. We went to the local ham radio get together and we played with electronics, but we soldered. We can't solder anymore. Apparently, you told me we can't solder, but we used to solder. And so it's easy. It's at least a bit easier now to get the information you need, and a lot of great resources online. And beyond just what we do in broadcast, I go on YouTube sometimes. I was watching the other day. There are a handful of guys out there that repair electronic equipment and race test equipment and voltmeters against each other and do really cool things that I also find are helpful. Talk about tuning antennas, and some of it's related to ham, but it applies to us, as we know. And so I enjoy watching that. There's a whole world out there. But it's up to you to take the time and make a difference in your world, right? It's up to you as a person to take advantage of that.
Whenever I see you working on something or talking to people, I see intensity and caring and curiosity, and these are every engineer. That's part of what being an engineer is. Maybe or maybe not the intensity, but the caring and the curiosity are absolutely key to being an excellent engineer. Not only for yourself, for your own career, but doing the best you can for your employer or your clients, whichever
Carry
business
today, Kirk. I talked I've said it probably 30 times today. But when I talk to market managers or station owners and they talk to me about their engineer or their contract engineer, I generally don't hear a complaint along the lines of, gee, they just don't know what they're doing. It's more about they don't care, their work product isn't great, it's hard to get a hold of them. They bitch to the staff, they don't get along with people. It's more about that. It's rare I hear that they don't know what they're doing. Occasionally an engineer may be an expert in something, but not AM great. Well, not many people are experts at AM anymore. We can work around that. We can find people to help. That's not an issue for an owner or a manager. It doesn't last long because we can work around that. But the caring and the little degree intensity and the way you carry yourself and holding a conversation, and people that know me know I've talked about this before, the way you dress. Everything matters. And that's typically what, if you do all those things even half right, it gives your boss a decent sense of confidence in you. Yeah. When you don't do those things, that's where you start to have issues. And that's the stuff that I hear about. So you're exactly right. You're exactly right, Kirk, for sure. And again, nobody knows everything. I don't know everything. I can't tell you how many times, even at the NAB, I go up to people at the vendors and manufacturers, or I get on the phone with somebody and I ask for assistance, like, hey, I know enough to be dangerous about this. Tell me what I don't know, or tell me what the best product is. I think I know, but help me understand. And sometimes I find out that there's a product coming out that isn't out yet that'll be even better than what is out there now. And if I just wait a little longer, I'll have a better option just by merely getting involved and asking. So, but look, that's kind of what you do. That's what TWiRT, you said it before. This is TWiRT, right? This is part of what you do.
That's what we try to do. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Gary. We got to go. And again, you've been live from the Seacrest Studios at which hospital in Atlanta?
Children's Hospital of Atlanta.
Okay.
One of a few that they have here. A great facility.
Gary Kline has been our guest. Thanks again, Gary, for being with us. Thanks to all of our sponsors on the show. They really help make this all possible. Please check them out. Let them know that you heard about them or were reminded about them on This Week in Radio Tech. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to this channel on YouTube, and you'll be reminded about the show automatically if you hit the little bell button too. You know all that. I don't want to bring that up every single time, but it would really be great if you would do that as well. And what else? Oh yeah, Chris Tarr. We expect Chris Tarr to be back next week. He's been off holding his wife's hand at a little medical procedure, and so let's keep him on our thoughts and prayers. Chris, hope you and Amy are doing just great, and we'll see you next week. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.